I'm so glad you're here because I have a lot to share with you, and we're going to get started. My name is Linda Kroll, and I'm here today to talk about limbo because it's something I'm very passionate about. My own life started with being in limbo for a long time in my own relationship, but in my 35 years of helping individuals and couples resolve conflict, I see that limbo is the most painful place to be. So whether you're here for your own relationship or for couples that you're counseling, I want to give you 20 minutes of some of my best tips so that you can get out of limbo yourself and help the people you serve. So let's start by taking a breath. Bring ourselves present. Thank you for joining me. And what I want you to know is that there is a way to get out of limbo, and we have to take it a step at a time. And the way we take it a step at a time is to begin by acknowledging what limbo is. Limbo is that state where you don't know what you want to do. And if it's your personal life, it takes over your personal life. You wake up every morning and you realize the day is starting, but you're not making a decision. You're stuck. And for many people, they're stuck on the decision of, do I want to stay in my relationship or do I want to go? And they may be in marriage counseling, but they don't know how to navigate marriage counseling because marriage counseling is dedicated to saving a marriage. And maybe they've thought about leaving or they have one foot out the door. So they don't even know what to do about marriage counseling. But then they don't want to go talk to a divorce attorney or a mediator because that would make it too regal. They're not ready to do that. So they get stuck in limbo. They don't even know they're in limbo. They distract themselves. They might eat too much, drink too much. They might have panic attacks, get enraged. Some people may even go have an affair because they can't decide what they want to do. And if this is you or someone you know or your clients, there is a way out of limbo. And the first way to get out of limbo is recognize you're in it. Recognize it feels like you're walking through mud, you don't know where to turn, you're lost in a forest, and find someone that can help you get out. And that's what I want to offer you today. Because my name is Linda Kroll. For 35 years, I've been an internal family systems therapist, a mediator, an attorney, a certified teacher of meditation, yoga, and Ayurveda. And I married my college sweetheart, and we were married for 20 years before our marriage started to have irreconcilable differences. And I was trained as a lawyer, but I stayed home to raise my children. And when we started looking at ending our marriage, I became a mediator because I thought maybe I could understand both sides. We could do some work ourselves. But mediating your own separation or divorce is like delivering your own baby. It might be possible, but I wouldn't recommend it. So as I was an attorney and a mediator and our marriage was beginning to unravel, I actually went back to school and became a licensed clinical professional counselor. I met Dick Schwartz, who talked about self and parts, and I put it all together because when I was sitting in the courtroom next to my soon-to-be beloved ex-husband, because I still loved him, even though we were separated for 10 years before we got divorced. Talk about being in limbo and what that feels like. But when we finally got divorced, because nothing like compassionate mediation was available then, we didn't have anyone to go to help us talk about the pain, to help us talk about our options, to help us understand what it might look like should we get divorced so that maybe we would have worked harder on resolving our differences. Either way, it went the typical adversarial process, where our children were caught in the middle, where we lost money, finances, friends, family. It was terrible. And because it was so terrible, I've made it pretty much my life's mission to help other people avoid that pain. And that's what I want for you, and that's what I want for your clients. So in 2016, I put all my education and experience together. I wrote the book, Compassionate Mediation, How to Add Passion to Your Marriage or Compassion to Your Divorce. And all of this is on my website at compassionatemediation.com. There's also a way to get in touch with me if you want to talk privately. And I'm going to be talking about my Compassionate Mediation program. That's an online program to get you unstuck. and my compassionate mediation certification for therapists, coaches, mediators, attorneys who work with individuals and couples in conflict and want to provide a way to deal with not just the legal and financial information if you're a mediator or an attorney, but also if you're a therapist or coach, to help your clients look at the legal information, the financial information, all the information they need to get out of limbo. Because the first step is knowing you're in limbo. The second step is to get support to get out of it. And when you get that support, you want to be able to get informed, to make informed, enlightened, empowered decisions for your future. And that's what I created in the compassionate mediation process. Because in marriage counseling, as I said, people are just looking to save their marriage. And then if there's a part of them that thought, I don't know if I want to stay. What would it look like if I left? There's no room in marriage counseling for that ambivalence. Sometimes therapists and coaches don't even ask the question, do you want to stay in this relationship? And I asked that in my first session, not as directly, but if you're working with a couple, and I'll give you a few hints of how I work with them to give them the tools that they can start to use after my first session. So in 45 minutes on Zoom, I talk to each member of the couple, and if you're part of that couple, I'll give you these tips. Figure out what it is that you do that triggers your partner. What does the partner do that triggers you? And then think about your family of origin, your partner's family of origin, because I'm asking in the first session, in the Compassionate Mediation Program, in the certification, I'm asking, what are the parts that are running the show? In other words, in internal family systems, we talk about self, capital S self. And when we're in self, we're calm, clear, and compassionate. And when we're in self, we can then make calm decisions, clear decision, confident, courageous decisions. But most of us aren't in self because we've exiled our pain and our sadness. It's too overwhelming. That's another reason people stay in limbo. They stay in limbo because to get out of limbo, they have to face the pain that they don't want to face. They have to face their fear. They may have to ask for what they want and need, and they don't even know what that is. So they just avoid, and that's how they manage. Some of us manage by being nice, pleasing, caretaking, hardworking, but many of us put on what I call this pseudo-self, where we look like we're in self, but we're not. We're still feeling hurt and sad or scared about something, and we're not dealing with it, so we stay in limbo. Or we get extreme. So we exhale certain parts, the sad, hurt, scared. We manage however we manage or put on a pseudo-self. And then when we can't manage the feelings, we get extreme in some way. And that's when people eat too much, drink too much, go have an affair, get depressed, have a panic attack, come in and talk about their weight or their depression, but they're not talking about their relationship because they think it's a black and white decision. They think they have to stay stuck because that's what they know, or they have to get divorced, which is not what they want. But in compassionate mediation, in the first session, we help people come from their best self, come from that clear, compassionate center. Because a lot of people in limbo feel, just let me make a decision. Let me decide. Okay, I'm deciding on a divorce, I'll get a divorce. I'm deciding to say I'll stick it out. But when they do that, they're not really happy. And so I tell people, heal your parts first and then make a decision from your higher self. And that's what we help our clients do. That's what I help you do. Because if you're panicked, anxious, worried, angry, resentful, guilty, you're not really thinking clearly. And there are parts of you that are jabbering at you all the time of, I really need to go. No, I love him or her. I need to stay. But what about the kids? And what about money? And what are we going to... And you don't have to listen to all that cacophony. You can learn compassionate mediation and then make decisions. Because what compassionate mediation does, it helps you get to your best self, create a compassionate relationship with empathy, explore your options, understand your rights and finances, and then create the relationship you desire and deserve. Excuse me. And I tell people, let me just take a drink here, sorry, a little love for you. I tell people who come to me, and I've been doing this for 35 years, but I often tell them that their first marriage is over. It's not about fixing it or saving it. It's about creating something new based on who they both are now. And even though that may sound harsh, it gives them a ramp to think we're not just going to go around in circles. And then when we start learning about self in parts in the first session, when I do the guided meditation that I do in every session, and I'll show you how to get that for yourself, when I do that, they have a felt sense of what being in self means, where they can calmly look at their relationship for what are they doing, because you can only change yourself. So if someone is in a relationship and they're in limbo, they usually have walls around their heart because they've been in pain and they don't want to be hurt anymore. Or they have filters through which they're judging themselves or their partner. And a lot of times we're judging ourselves. We stayed too long. Why didn't we say something sooner? Why did I put up with this? And often we're judging the other person. They don't, they never, they always. And when you're walled and have this cloudy filter, you can't make clear decisions because you keep telling yourself the same stories. The same stories about what your partner's doing, the same stories about how bad you have it, and you become the victim in your story instead of the hero. And you can become the hero. And that's what compassionate mediation does. It gives you the tools to help others. It gives you the skill set for yourself to really take a look at what am I doing here? What if I brought my best self to the relationship? What if I worked with someone who helped me talk about the pain from my past, let go of my limiting beliefs and judgments, and really communicate from my heart? And when you do that, because I teach compassionate communication in the first session, meaning I show you how to connect to this self energy. And then I show you that the limiting beliefs that you got pretty much came from the family of origin and your partner's family of origin. And everybody's doing the best they knew how to do according to their level of awareness at the time. However, people can learn a new way to relate to each other, compassionately, with empathy. And even if that means that you're not compatible anymore, you can find a way to part that's peaceful, that's respectful, that's calm. And what I found is that there are many people who have problems with their partner and they're angry, but inside there's really an inner child learning to be free. And I know that we can change the face of divorce one heart at a time. Because when someone is in self, this is what they feel. They're calm, they're clear. And this is for you too, because if you're working with couples, if you're working with an individual who isn't clear, if you're coaching, if you're mediating, you want to be in self and you want to help your clients get to self. So you're calm, you're clear, you're compassionate, you're confident, you're connected to your higher self, you're courageous to make decisions and creative about those decisions, and you're curious instead of judgmental. And here's this chart I give everyone that comes into my office, even on Zoom, explaining self in parts, explaining that we have this healthy self, that's all these C words that I just mentioned, and also grateful. And we exile the pain. We exile it, but this is the what about me? Who's ever going to love and care for me the way I need? That's our inner child learning for that, yearning for that attention, affection, appreciation, and acceptance. And then we manage in different ways. And then we put on the pseudo self, and it's our ego with our expectations and our judgments. And then we get extreme in some way. There are ways to numb. And sometimes we go call a lawyer and say, get me divorced, because we're being reactive. But that's not the way to do it, because as I was saying, no matter how angry someone is, no matter how they come to my office, I always see the inner child that's yearning for connection, that's yearning for attention, affection, appreciation, and acceptance. And that's something that you can help them get to if you're working with compassionate mediation. And because I'm so passionate about it, I created programs because people were coming to my office and I was basically giving the same first interview, introduction, guided meditation, so that I templated it. So my compassionate mediation program for individuals, and therapists and coaches can take it too, is a 6-hour video series of me talking to you as if you were in my office, where I give you the tools to become your best self, to learn how to have empathy, both for yourself and for the other person, where I offer you all the options that you may not have thought of. Because when people are caught in black and white thinking, stay, go, don't want to do either, they don't know that there's individual counseling, marriage counseling. There's also go date nights, but there's also post-nuptial agreements that you can create where you begin to learn what your assets are, learn where your money is, start to have those conversations, and become informed and empowered within your own relationship. And a post-nup is like a prenup, it's after you're married, and it allows you to renegotiate your roles. So you don't have to stay stuck on who's in charge of the finances, who's earning more, who's making the decisions. And often if you're working with a couple, just opening the door to that conversation gives you weeks and sometimes months to coach them. Because in my certification for professionals, I give you all the outlines, the meditations, the questions to ask, all the information so you stay one step ahead of your clients in giving them the information they need. So I mentioned money, which is often an issue, and it's often an issue in counseling. But when you mention money, it brings up all the family of origin issues about what they learned as a child. People who are codependent don't often know how to ask for what they want and need, and so they've ignored their finances. And just bringing up that situation and the power and control and the history gives you a chance to intervene in a way where you're teaching them how to compassionately communicate. You're teaching yourself and your clients how to use words like I am hurt, sad, or scared, not you did this, you did that, you did this. Because when you're using you messages to talk to your partner, they're not listening. I mean, all they're doing is fact checking, and then they rebut, and then they deny, and then they defend, and you're left with feeling not heard. So when you learn the miracle of empathy, which I teach you in the program and I give you in the certification, you learn a whole new way to relate. Because in that, I actually have a handout that I give to people that looks like this, and it talks about using I messages, talking about the parts that you've exiled, the hurt, the sadness, the fear. So think about it. What if you could go back to your partner and instead of saying you never pay attention to me, you say, I want to talk to you about something, is now a good time. And when you stay on your phone all the time, I feel sad. And then in a perfect world, your partner would say, I hear you, I understand, and I'm sorry. But sometimes you may have to give empathy to your partner and say, I know that when I nag you to do something or when I keep asking you to do something, it hurts your feelings. Is that right? And when you give empathy, you can receive more empathy, and then you are grateful, and then you can renegotiate something different. And that's what I show people. Usually in the second session, 45 minutes, we do the initial interview of each person. And when I do the initial interview, I ask people, if you had a magic wand, and just ask yourself, if you had a magic wand, what would you like to see happen? Because a lot of times people don't know. But when I'm talking to them, if I'm talking on Zoom to a couple, I'll talk to both of them for a few minutes, and then I will talk first to the person who did not call me for the appointment. So let's say the wife called me for the appointment. I will ask her if I can put her in a room. I will talk to her husband first, and I will start by asking him just to take a breath and ask him how he feels about being here. And usually when you have a couple and you separate them for a moment, the truth comes out. Their guard comes down. You can see the sadness or the anger or the fear. And then when I ask them the questions, what's going on? What does your partner do that triggers you? What do they say? What do they do? How do they feel? What do you do that triggers your partner? What do you say, do, and feel? Tell me about your family of origin. Tell me about your partner's family of origin. And then if you had a magic wand, what would you like to see happen? And this magic wand question is really an important one because it gives you, if you're working with a couple, it gives you a trajectory to see if they're both on the same page. Because sometimes what they want is their partner to change and to stay together. Sometimes they don't want to be together. It's totally gone. So then you have to figure out when you put them back together, you're going to have to navigate the ambivalence of one that has one foot out the door and the other one who's dedicated to staying. And what you have to do then is you have to have a different conversation with the initiator, the one who wants to leave, and the non-initiator, the one who wants to stay. You have to tell the initiator that in compassionate mediation, we talk about everything. We use I messages with the miracle of empathy. But we also heal from the past in ways that can release that and move towards a new future. But usually when someone has one foot out the door, they don't want to do that because it feels too much like marriage counseling. They're done. And that's what happens in your office sometimes. You're working with a couple and the couple seems to be paying attention. You seem to be making progress. And then all of a sudden somebody's triggered and they're back to the same dynamic that they came in your office with. And if you've done an initial interview where you get a sense of what they each want, it helps you normalize that everybody has parts sometimes that think about leaving. So you make it a safe forum for people to talk about, well, if you did leave, what would you do about money? And if you did leave, what would that happen with the house? And you don't have to be a mediator or an attorney to know this. Because if you take my compassionate mediation coaching certification, you have all this outlined, templated, videoed, so that you can open the door to the conversation. And the content, what you're actually talking about, is just a little piece, but then you process all the feelings that come up. Because when you talk about finances, when you talk about possibly selling the house or sharing custody of your children, people then can stop, breathe, and communicate better. And sometimes when they're communicating with empathy and they really make an amend from their heart, where they really hear the other person, understand the other person, and tell them, I'm sorry, I don't want you to feel hurt. I want to learn a new way to communicate, and I'm sorry. And even if they're reading down the page I give them, I tell their partner, at least they're here willing to read down the page. So it moves incrementally towards empathy. And when there's empathy, there's healing. And while I'm talking about healing, I'll mention my spiritual graft, G-R-A-F-T. I believe that in all the suffering we have, it's due to our ego's wounds. It's due to the way we were brought up and the limiting beliefs we have and the way we think the world should be and our expectations and our judgments. But what happens when we live that way is we're disappointed. And someone once said, expectations are premeditated resentments. So then we resent, and then we judge, and then we try to change, and then we stay stuck again in limbo. But it doesn't have to be that way. Because when our egos are wounded, where we're not getting our needs met, we can put a spiritual graft, like a skin graft, on that wound. And the graft is G-R-A-F-T. And what that is we start with gratitude. Even if you're thinking of getting a divorce, even if you're leaning in that direction, you can be grateful for the years you've shared, the assets you've acquired, the children if you have them. All the experiences, you can come from a place of gratitude, because gratitude, like those C words, calm, clear, compassionate, is one of the elements of self. And you bring more self energy into your relationship. The R-A, G-R-A-F-T, the R-A is radical acceptance. And what that means is you stop fighting what is, radically accept that this is a situation now, and you can change it. Meaning you don't have to keep regurgitating the past in order to protect yourself from falling back into some codependent ways if you're codependent. You don't have to project the past into the future, and that just keeps you stuck. So what you do is you radically accept this is what is now, but we can change it, and we don't know what that change is yet. But the F is forgiveness. Forgiveness for yourself, forgiveness for your partner. Everybody's done the best they knew how to do up until this time, based on their family of origin, their level of awareness, and the dynamics and habits you've created together. So gratitude, radical acceptance, forgiveness, and trust. And that trust is your higher self, your higher power, God, the universe, your therapist, me, the programs. So trust that you're moving out of limbo by knowing you're in it, by getting some information to get out of it, by processing the feelings that you've been exiling that you can heal, by getting to your best self, letting go of your limiting beliefs and judgments, unburdening pain from the past, which is also in both the program and the training, and relate from your heart. And that creates all the difference in the world. So let's look at ways that we can work together. Because if you go to my website at compassionatemediation.com, it talks about all the programs and the gifts. So if you go to the freebies at the top there are gifts for individuals, there's gifts for professionals. If you want to chat with me, which I'd love to do because I'd love to be of service, there's a chat with Linda link, because the certification is starting soon, and I would love to have you join me because it truly is a transformational experience. The certification is a 3-month program. And I meet with you in a very small group. And the reason I keep the group small is because it is intimate, it is personal, and it is by invitation, meaning we have to have a phone call first to make sure it's a fit. I want to find out where you are professionally, what you would like to see happen in your world. I'd like to help you manifest it, whether it's to be better with couples, whether it's to become an expert in conflict resolution, increase your outreach, your impact, your income, to get known and get more referrals. You might want to give groups or train others or do workshops. That's all available in my Compassionate Mediation Coaching certification. And because it's small, you do your own work. And if you go to compassionatemediation.com details, you'll hear from other members of the cohorts. I'm starting my 7th cohort. There were 6 others. You'll hear from other participants because it's not just what I share, and I share a lot, 35 years worth. But even more, it's the people in the group. So we meet in the group for 2 hours every other week for 3 months. And then in between, you practice the skills I'm teaching you. So you practice the initial interview. You practice teaching people how to speak with empathy. You get the information about the options. So I mentioned counseling. I mentioned post-nup. There's also separation. Some people can separate in the house. And just acknowledging, we're not trying right now, we're just coexisting. Let's take a break. Let's go to our own corners. Let's figure out how we're going to co-parent the children peacefully. Let's do our own work to heal. So you can separate in the house. You can separate out of the house, but it's helpful to have somebody help you navigate that. How do you share children, finances, etc. You can nest so that the children stay in the house and parents can come and go. And you can get a legal separation, which is like a divorce, and you can get divorced. And then there's so much to learn along the way. It's all in the Compassionate Mediation Program. It's all in the Compassionate Certification, coaching certification information. Because you do not have to stay stuck. You don't have to stay in limbo. When I was in limbo, it affected every aspect of my life. It affected my health, it affected my work, it affected my ability to be a parent. There was just a cloud hanging over me because I knew I wasn't deciding. And I find even when I work with people, individual and couples, that when they make a decision, it gets them out of limbo and it feels better. And the decision can be to do compassionate mediation, because compassionate mediation starts with learning compassionate communication. So you start with being your best self, bringing that to your relationship, creating a compassionate relationship, talking about the past with empathy, when this happened, I felt hurt, or I feel hurt or sad or scared. And teaching people how to really listen, understand, and have empathy for each other does miracles. That's why I call it the miracle of empathy. Excuse me. So what you do is you create the compassionate relationship, you explore all of your options. And that is so important, because when you're informed, and people are afraid to be informed, they've either ignored their finances, they're afraid to figure out what's going to happen, but just getting the information takes a step in the direction of feeling more empowered. And when you feel more empowered, you can meet the moment without projecting into the future every possible scenario. And in the Compassionate Mediation program, I take you by the hand, same with the certification. And in the certification, like I said, you do your own work, because all of us have relationships. Whenever there's a relationship, there's conflict. And some of you might be in limbo in your relationships. Some of you might be in limbo in what kind of training to get. I hope to get you out of limbo, to have you sign up for a 15-minute call with me. And what you can do to do that is you go to compassionatemediation.com and see all the free gifts. You can also get my free roadmap, which is a roadmap of the process, which takes you through every step that I do in the process. And you can go to lindakrollbook.com and get a free chapter of the book, which explains self in parts and a lot of what we're talking about today. And if you're interested in the mediation coaching certification, please get the details on compassionatemediation.com and sign up for a chat with me, because I would really love the opportunity to share this with you. Like I said, for many years, I thought I was doing my family a favor by staying in limbo. I was legally still married, even though I was in a relationship. My estranged husband was in a relationship. But limbo is very painful and scary and sad. And you may know someone in limbo. You may go to lunch with a girlfriend, perhaps, who keeps talking about the same problems in her relationship. And the problem is we can't change anyone else. We can only change ourselves. So what compassionate mediation does is it gives you the opportunity to bring your best self back to your relationship, to begin to get the attention, affection, and appreciation that you need by giving it to yourself. Because I always say that love is the answer, but it starts with loving yourself. And it starts with helping your clients love themselves. And in my book on compassionate mediation, Dick Schwartz, who's the founder of Internal Family Systems, has said that divorce brings out the worst in us and leaves lasting scars. But I'm a master at lifting divorcing couples out of their narrow, protective perspectives. They learn the larger lessons from their relationships and proceed based on the best interests of all involved. That this is relationship healing at its best. I'm so grateful to Dick Schwartz for all he taught me and my other trainers at the IFS Institute. And what it does, it helps me bring my best self to what I'm doing. In other words, I am kind of just bringing a compassionate forum to keep it safe for people to talk about all parts of themselves, even the parts that want to get divorced. So if you're still here, I just want to show you, we've all got an inner child, and oftentimes we try to look cool. Sometimes we put on a pseudo self, or we put on a codependent self, and often people come to my office and they're just ready to fight it out, and they come to your office. People don't have to fight, they don't have to stay stuck, they don't have to be codependent. They can take care of their inner child in a way that gives them new movement in a direction towards peace. Peace, clarity, compassion, and it all happens with compassionate mediation. So again, if this is for your own relationship, please contact me. I'll help you get out of limbo. I also see clients personally on Zoom. So I see individuals, I see couples, I do mediation. But the Compassionate Mediation Program is an online program that's available for your own self-study that gives you 6 hours as if you were talking to me directly, with handouts, with manuals, with things to keep you on track, so you can take one incremental step at a time in the direction of your future. And the night before I got divorced, I wrote a settlement prayer that I brought to the courtroom to give to my husband and our attorneys. And it basically said that I pray, and I wrote it as an intention too that I can send you, that I pray for a peaceful and respectful resolution where we come from our highest selves, where we remember the parts of us that are scared and sad and angry and retributive and judgmental and guilty, but we ask those parts to rest while we come from our highest and best self, keeping in mind the best interest of all concerned. And for the sake of our children, for the sake of all we once had, we want to continue to love and honor each other in whatever way feels healthy, and know that we came from our higher self in all the ways we could. And when I gave that prayer in my Compassionate Mediation program, one of the people that was taking the program took that prayer to her husband. They sat at their kitchen counter and they worked out the details of their separation and divorce, because it brings a higher self energy. It brings the spirit of God, higher power, your true self, that Buddha nature, that compassionate witness into your relationship. And if you're working with couples or individuals, you help them do that. And I give you all those tools in the Compassionate Mediation Coaching Certification. It's starting soon. It's a small group. You get me for 3 months plus the group and then beyond. And it truly can change your life and your practice. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Please go to compassionatemediation.com. You can join me for a chat. You can get your free gifts. I have a relationship assessment for you to assess your relationship and what you can do to make changes. My guided meditation is on my Compassionate Communication Care Kit, the free chapter of my book, the free Kindle book on compassionate divorce, the roadmap for those of you who would like to learn more, and the certification information. It's all there. And thank you. We do need to help ourselves and the people we serve to get out of limbo. It's such a painful, lonely, sad, scary place to be. But with your bringing your self-energy to your relationship and to your clients, we can change the face of divorce one heart at a time. Because another thing I say is that families need not be broken, but can be peacefully and respectfully restructured. And we can spare our children from the shrapnel of our animosity. Because it doesn't have to be that adversarial process where lives and fortunes and families and homes are destroyed. We can use compassionate mediation to begin to make a difference now, to begin to compassionately communicate, come from your highest and best self, let go of those limiting beliefs and judgments, unburden pain from the past, and relate from your heart. So from my heart to yours, thank you so much for joining me. Please go to compassionatemediation.com. Let's find time for a chat, personally or professionally, and I look forward to connecting with you. Thanks again for being here, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now.